and you're watching my journal. If you are new to the conversation, we want to welcome you. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that when I post videos on Sundays, normally on Sundays, you will be sure to get the notification. And if you are returning, we want to welcome you back. Come on in, kings and queens. Hope you had a great week. You're looking forward to a better week. If you know anyone in Texas and you have not checked on them to make sure they have lights and water, please do that. I live in Texas, and thankfully the water has been restored, the lights have been restored, Wi-Fi has been restored. So we're here because there's always something to talk about. Today we're talking about crooked cops in Baltimore. If you know anybody who lives in Maryland or you live in Maryland, you might know this already and maybe you don't, and that's why we're going to talk about it. I'm TriCasting on YouTube and Facebook Live and LinkedIn. So if you want to comment, then feel free to do that, or you can text me at 214-919-9360. Typing that in. And we'll get started. When it comes to holding bully, liar, killer cops accountable for misusing their authority, which normally is against Black and brown people, you know, President Biden and Congress, they are what you call slow moving trains. But lawmakers in the state of Maryland, they appear to be stepping up to hold law enforcement officers accountable for their actions. So if you haven't heard, in the state of Maryland, the state legislature, state lawmakers, they've introduced a bill that will get rid of what's called as qualified immunity, police qualified immunity. Now, what that is this immunity gives law enforcement officers a legal defense against personal liability for misconduct in the line of duty. It gives them, if they don't follow protocol and they are found to be negligent in how they treated somebody, or they didn't follow standard operating procedures, or they did something that they shouldn't have done against training, they still get to hide behind what's called police qualified immunity. Well, state lawmakers in Maryland said no more. It happens more often than we know. And most of the time it happens with you. We all know about these potentially deadly no-knock search warrants. The biggest story, the latest victim of that was Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend, Kenneth, when the Louisville SWAT team in Kentucky broke in, and Kenneth started shooting in self-defense, because they didn't know who it was. So that's what happens. SWAT team comes in, they are breaking in, they're trying to bust down your door, they didn't knock. And then you, as a resident or homeowner, you think you're under attack by God knows who. So you start using your legal firearms to shoot back at them or to shoot at them. And then the police shoot at you. And then somebody gets maimed, somebody gets killed, like Breonna Taylor got killed. And then whether or not they were guilty or whether or not they were innocent is thrown to the wayside, because the SWAT team came in and started shooting. When the smoke clears, y'all go to court. The judge has no problem charging the residents with attempted murder, like they did Kenneth, Breonna's boyfriend. They have no problem charging you with assault against a police officer. But when it comes to charging police officers for busting in your house with a no-knock search warrant, whether or not you were guilty or whether or not they were supposed to be there, they get to hide behind what's called police immunity. So now that's BS. Okay. And state lawmakers in Maryland are saying they don't want they want to get rid of that immunity, that police qualified immunity. Something else that's in this bill, and it's going to be voted on or start to be voted on this coming week, is they're addressing the use of excessive force. They're saying that not only are they wanting to take away the qualified immunity, which will open up crooked cops, make them be liable for prosecution if they use excessive force. It's also going to open up these co-worker cops that stand by in the blue wall of silence, cops who lie for their bully friends. It's going to open them up to prosecution. And also, it's going to, if they are found, if somebody dies in the process of this excessive force, then these cops could get up to 10 years in prison. So it sounds good. It sounds good. So that's what they're trying to do in Maryland. And also, they put in a part of this bill that cops, if they shoot somebody or harm somebody and then they stand by and don't even offer assistance and they let you bleed out while they tell you to put your hands up, that you're going to be held liable for that too. And we know the latest example of that was the police officer in Columbus, Ohio. His name is Adam Coy. He shot and killed Andre Hill, who was in his family's garage walking out, and he shot him and then told him to put his hands up while the man was dying, and other police officers stood around as well. So in Maryland, they say they're not going to have any more of that. And if their excessive force is blatant and they are found to be guilty of that, they could be not only the immunity, qualified police immunity taken away, they could be charged and they could be in prison for up to 10 years behind this. Not just the police officer who did the excessive force and shot somebody and it ended up in them dying. Also, the police officers who stand by and allow it to happen and don't intercede on behalf of the person, most often the unarmed Black and brown people. Okay, so they're like trying to get this thing, they're trying to nip it in the bud. Now, if you listen to my previous packages, my previous videos, especially the one last week, I just talked to you about how so many pieces of legislation are passed in the state houses, kind of like a backdoor way of getting things done, because we're so busy. Americans are so busy watching what's going on in the White House. We so busy watching what's going on in Congress that these state legislators are behind closed doors doing some other wheeling and dealing. And before you know it, you turn around and you got a state law that you have to deal with that is just as bad, if not worse, for our Black community than what they would ever try to pass in front of the nation in Congress. So that's why it's important to pay attention to what's going on in your state legislature. And because, and in case you missed last week, I was talking about all the voter suppression bills that have, it's like 100 voter suppression bills that have come up in different state houses across the country since the 2020 November election. So going back to this police bill in Maryland. If you know anybody who lives in Maryland, if you live in Maryland yourself, you need to tell your state legislator, your state representative in Annapolis, tell them that you want to support, I think it's State House Bill 1049. Tell them you want them to pass that, because that's the first step in holding these bully, lie, killer cops in Maryland, holding them accountable. Now, If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe so that when I post videos, you will be the first person to get it. And you can comment anytime. If you want to text me, you can text me at 214-919-9360. Now, in case you thought that these Maryland lawmakers are just God's gifts to politics and that they just really are carrying on, they're so unselfish and they just really care about people. I'm sure some of them do care, but here's what's really going on in Maryland. It's because of Baltimore. Okay, now I used to live in Baltimore and I used to live in Maryland. I spent, let's see, at least 14, 15 years of my life living in Maryland and Baltimore. So I lived in Prince George's County most of the time and then a couple of years in Baltimore. So I have nothing against Baltimore, nothing against Maryland. Let me say that. But because if y'all don't know, if you don't live in Maryland, they got some crooked ass cops in Maryland. Okay. So I'm going to go through all that, but I'm saying that to say these Maryland state lawmakers, they're not necessarily so altruistic. They're really CYA and they're covering their own ass because these crooked ass cops in Baltimore are going to dang near bankrupt the state because the police department has to pay out so many civil law settlements over these police officers who are not following the rules and not doing what they're supposed to do. And so that's why the state lawmakers are now deciding, you know what? They're tired of paying millions of dollars out in civil payments to residents who have filed suit against these police officers who are using excessive force and not following the rules and are straight out criminals themselves. So that's what's going on. Now, the most notable lawsuit of late happened in 2015. You remember Freddie Gray died in police custody, and there were 4 or 5 different police officers, Baltimore City police officers, who were charged with his murder. But when they went to court, some coward ass jurors, even though the police officers on the stand during the trial said, I admit I did not follow protocol. Jurors found him not guilty. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But that's what happened. You can go back and do your research, but I'm telling you that's what happened. And so that happened about 2 or 3 times. And after that, the prosecutor's office just went ahead and dropped the charges against the other police officers, because even when they trying to charge the police for doing the wrong thing and trying to get a conviction, they still need citizens, jurors, to stand up and do what they're supposed to do. So it turns out that Freddie Gray's family got Freddie Gray's family got was it $8 million? Freddie Gray's family got a bunch of money, $6.4 million. Freddie Gray's family got $6.4 million from the city of Baltimore. And here's how it works. The city of Baltimore, the police departments across the city, they get their budget from the city or the county that is over that city or county. The county or the city gets their working budget from the state. So these state legislators in Maryland are tired of paying the bill for these civil suits that keep happening. Well, how bad is it? Since 2015, there was a Baltimore Sun research case. They found out that since 2015, there have been 269 cases filed against police officers in Baltimore for misconduct. Okay, 269. That's about 45 a year. That's about 1 a week, y'all. Once a week, somebody is filing a lawsuit against a city, Baltimore City police officer. So nearly $3 million has been paid in settlements, in judgments that include civil rights violations and just unjustified use of force against just the city of Baltimore's police department. Now, that does not include most recently, since 2015, there was a guy who was in the police academy for Baltimore. He was trying to be a Baltimore City police officer. One of the trainers at the police academy in Baltimore shot the man in the eye. Shot the man in the eye. Now they had to pay him $8 million. So that's not a part of the $3 million that the city is found to have been paid out since 2015, because it wasn't a police misconduct settlement, but it was a settlement nonetheless. And of course, it didn't include Freddie Gray's $6 million payout to his family. Now, it also does not include, I don't know if y'all know about this. If you live in Baltimore, you probably know this already, but there's this thing, it's Baltimore's version of a SWAT team. It's called the Gun Trace Task Force. Apparently, the Gun Trace Task Force is supposed to go to people's residence and trace guns that are being held illegally, or that apparently are supposed to have been used in a crime, and they're supposed to be going and collect the guns based on the trace and all of that. Well, two of the police officers that were a part of this Gun Trace Task Force, y'all, was robbing people. Coming in the house, claiming they looking for the gun, will rob the people, take their money and jewelry and stuff, and then bounce. Police officers. So that had been happening, and then everybody started reporting it. Well, you know, it take more than one person, because they don't believe you because you supposedly had a gun and it was not supposed to be used. So 5, 6, 10 people started making reports, and that's why it's important to make a report, even on the side of the road. If a police officer doesn't treat you right, if they don't follow procedure that you know they're supposed to follow, if they make you turn off your cell phone, turn off your camera, and do all this stuff that they're not supposed to be telling you to do, you make a note of it and you file a report. Because it's not just going to be your report that's going to make a difference. It's going to be your report. It's going to be my report. It's going to be his report. It's going to be her report. It's going to be her report. And when all those reports get to filing up in that folder, then that's when they do something about it. So anyway, back to this Baltimore Gun Trace Task Force. They found out that 2 of the police officers, they are now charged. Well, I think they already convicted them of robbery, y'all, police officers. And I'm going to put their names out there. 2 of them that were charged with robbery on this Gun Trace Task Force, they were Daniel Herschel and Marcus Taylor. And so right now, the city is in the middle of a lawsuit because, of course, the people got together, did a class action lawsuit against the city because these police officers were acting on behalf of the city, on behalf of the police department. And so they're holding the city liable. But the city is saying, we shouldn't be held liable for what they did. But, oh, yes, you should. But it's become such a problem with these crooked ass cops in Baltimore that now you got the state legislators saying, hold up. We no longer, 1, want you to hide behind police immunity. And 2, when they catch you doing wrong, we want them to charge you personally. And so no other state is doing this except in Colorado. Recently, a state legislator in Colorado is now making police officers pay a percentage of the civil lawsuit if they are found to be negligent. So in Colorado, maybe the Colorado Springs Police Department, I'm assuming that's the police department. But, well, if it's the state, it's all over the state. Duh. If it's the state, it's all over the state. That if a police officer, a law enforcement officer in Colorado is the subject of a civil lawsuit whereby he or she is found to be negligent or to have not followed the rules and they're now being sued, or they cause somebody some injury, that police officer has to pay 5% of the civil lawsuit, or the settlement, or $25,000, whichever is less. And you know what? When you start holding these individuals individually accountable, personally accountable, a lot of this mess is going to stop. So that's what's going on. And it's not just in Baltimore or in Maryland. It's not just in Colorado. If you look at, of course, we know about Breonna Taylor, that's in Kentucky. Her family got a $12 million settlement from the Louisville Police Department. Chicago got it bad. Laquan McDonald's family got a $5 million lawsuit from the Chicago Police Department. There's a guy named Jaquez Rivera. He got a $17 million settlement from the Chicago Police Department. It was so egregious that the police officer in Chicago set up Jaquez, set him up to take the fall for something he didn't do. He spent about 20 years in prison. And when he got out, he probably got out only because they found out that the crooked cops set him up. So they had to pay him $17 million. And then, of course, we know about Philando Castile in suburban Minneapolis. His family got $3 million. Those are just a few of the cases that we know about. So the strategy in Maryland is CYA, cover your ass, police officers, because they're no longer trying to do it. So when it comes to fending off an attack, most people, when we're in the middle of with a police officer, we just kind of think there's nothing that we can do. But this is going to show y'all the steps taken by the Maryland state legislators and the one taken in Colorado. That goes to show you that these other people, these taxpayers, these state legislators, they are tired of paying the penalty for these bully, liar, killer cops. And so stay strong. We're making progress. It's not where we thought it would be. You thought, President Biden was going to be your saving grace, some of y'all. And we thought maybe if we put this person in Congress, they going to make it happen. But really, when you look at the police procedures or the police legislation that comes out of the state houses. When you look at voting legislation that comes out of the state house, and educational funding for the different school systems that comes out of the state house. So really, we need to be paying more attention to what's going on in the state houses than in Congress. So again, if you know anybody who lives in Maryland or you live in Maryland, you tell them they need to call their representative in Annapolis, Maryland, and let them know to support State House Bill 1049. And check out your state legislators and see what they're doing about police legislation. It could be that this might be the route we need to take. Go from state to state to state and draft a bill, find somebody who's willing to draft this bill, and we might get some stuff done. Okay. So again, you are watching my podcast, my TriCast. I'm Steffanie Rivers, and to find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. It's at eurweb.com. Typing that in for you. It's at eurweb.com. And that's it. Down and dirty. Let's make it happen in Maryland. Let's make it happen in other states. Check out your state. The life you save might be your own or somebody you know. And that's it. Peace and blessings. Have a good week.